Hi everyone, PTB Spotter here, and today I'm at Inverkeithing. We're going to be seeing services from Scotrail and 2 services from LNER. So, let's get into the video. Departing out now is the 10:49 Scotrail service from Dundee to Edinburgh Waverley, 17452. Arriving in now is the delayed 10:51 LNER service from London King's Cross to Aberdeen. 800 113. And passing through there, we had a Scotrail service from Aberdeen to Edinburgh Waverley. Departing out now is the delayed 10:51's LNER service from London King's Cross to Aberdeen. This train is departing out about 16 minutes late. And arriving in over here, we have a Scotrail service from, this is from Leaving to Waverley. Departing out now is 17409 on the 1109 Scotrail service from Leaving to Edinburgh Waverley. And the one from Aberdeen to Waverley, Edinburgh Waverley, was 43128 and 43179. Arriving in now is the delayed 1100 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Perth. 17393. This train is running about 12 minutes late. Departing out now is a delayed 1100 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Perth. Arriving in now is the delayed 1107 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Cowdenbeath. And that one there is 17394. Arriving in over there is the 1116 Scotrail service from Cowdenbeath to Edinburgh Waverley, and it's 17407. And departing out over here is the delayed 1107 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Cowdenbeath. Departing out about 8 minutes late. Aaron, if you're watching this, here he is. Departing out now is the 1116 Scotrail service from Cowdenbeath to Edinburgh Waverley. And off goes, you know, his wee friend here. And that is 174.07 departing out once again. Arriving in now is the 11:20 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dundee. 174.04 is on this service. Departing out now is the 11:20 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dundee. Arriving in now is the 11:28 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven. Front is 158717. And we will probably get the rear when it departs out. And arriving in over there is the 11:29 Scotrail service from Perth to Edinburgh Waverley. I shall find out what that is when it departs out. Departing out now is the 11:28 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven. (174.15) on the rear. And 158711 is on the Perth to Edinburgh Waverley service, which is now departing out. So departing out now is the 11:29 Scotrail service from Perth to Edinburgh Waverley, 158711. Arriving in now is the 11:37 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley, 158739. Departing out now is the 11:37 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley. Arriving in over there is a Scotrail service to Edinburgh Waverley, but I shall find out what that is, and I believe that is the 11:46. Arriving in now is the 11:43 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven, 158718. And 158725 is the 11:46 Scotrail service from Dundee to Edinburgh Waverley. Departing out now is the 11:43 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven. Departing out now is the 1146 Scotrail service from Dundee to Edinburgh Waverley. One 58725 is off again. Passing through now is a Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Aberdeen. (43.129) and 43.183. Arriving in now is the 1154 Scotrail service from Leaving to Edinburgh Waverley, which is 158736. Departing out now is the 1154 Scotrail service from Leaving to Edinburgh Waverley. And arriving in at the same time is the 1157 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Perth. 158710 on the front. And the rear is 158740. Departing out now is the 1157 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Perth. Arriving in now is the 1205 LNER service from Aberdeen to London King's Cross. And it's 800-104. Departing out now is the 1205 LNER service from Aberdeen to London King's Cross. Arriving in now is the 1212 Scotrail service from Cowdenbeath to Edinburgh Waverley. 17394. Departing out now is the 1212 Scotrail service from Cowdenbeath to Edinburgh Waverley. And arriving in at the same time is also the 1212 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Cowdenbeath, which is 17407. He's back again. Departing out now is the 1212 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Cowdenbeath. Arriving in now is the 1220 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dundee. 174.52. Arriving in now is a Scotrail service from Perth to Edinburgh Waverley. The front was 158733. I will find out what the rear is when it departs out. Departing out now is a 1219 Scotrail service from Perth to Edinburgh Waverley. And departing out now is a 1220 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Dundee. And the rear on the 158 is 158720. Arriving in now is the 1229 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven. 17408. Departing out now is the 1229 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven. Oh, it's saying not in service on the back, but that is off to Leven. Arriving in now is the 1234 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley. 17434 is on this service. Departing out now is the 1234 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley. Arriving in now is the 1245 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven. 158711. Arriving in now is the 1245 Scotrail service from Dundee to Edinburgh Waverley, 158730. And departing out now is the 1245 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Leven. Departing out now is the 12:45 Scotrail service from Dundee to Edinburgh Waverley. Arriving in now is the 12:58 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Perth. Departing out now is the 12:58 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Perth. Passing through now is a Scotrail service from Aberdeen to Edinburgh Waverley. 43139 on the front. (43.135) on the rear. Arriving in now is the 13:07 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley. 174.15 on the front. We'll find out what the rear is when it departs. Departing out now is the 13:07 Scotrail service from Leven to Edinburgh Waverley. Arriving in now is the 13:12 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Cowdenbeath. 158.725. Let's welcome the rain is on. Departing out now is the 13:12 Scotrail service from Edinburgh Waverley to Cowdenbeath. Arriving in now is the 13:13 Scotrail service from Cowdenbeath to Edinburgh Waverley, which is the return of 174.07. Departing out now is the 13:13 Scotrail service from Cowdenbeath to Edinburgh Waverley. I reckon this is the third time I've caught this train today. And that's going to be a final train of the video, so I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.